I am delighted to introduce the renowned philatelist from Germany, Mr. Ralph Ebner, FRPSL, who is the chairman of the Revenue Commission FIP. Mr. Ebner started collecting stamps from 1974 and revenue stamps from 1990. He assigned the role of notified Cinderella philatelist. His collection of Austrian revenues has won 3 large gold medals. He has more than 20 advanced revenue collections plus worldwide reference collections of revenues, including Indian states. Now I request Mr. Ebner to take us through the much awaited presentation. Over to you, Mr. Ebner.
Thank you for the nice introduction. I'm quite honored to be able to take this occasion on Zoom, and I'm happy to see we have still 69 people attending, which is great. Let me share my screen. Now my presentation should be quite different from the one we have seen before. I'm coming a bit more from the theory, but try to give some nice, good examples as well. But I'm not talking about one exhibit of mine. I'm talking more about what the Bureau has been discussing over the last 10 years. For us, the revenue guidelines welcomed 3 different approaches to exhibit revenues. We feel there may be 4, 5, 6 different approaches, and whenever an exhibitor is going to decide, will be welcomed. What we don't want is that an exhibit changes its approach within the storyline. So we may go traditional. This is well known from the postal side of the hobby. Fiscal history is pretty much the postal history equivalence. We also considered subject-based to be a very important approach. We have been looking for a word. We don't like the word thematic, because subject-based is that we consider a certain kind of tax, for instance, entertainment tax or tax on bicycle riding, or we have that wonderful exhibit around that is from cradle to grave, everything in life that's being taxed. So we are very open for whatever an exhibitor wants to be exhibited, he may do so, but he must make it clear in title and his structure so we understand what it is. A comment here is stationery is seen as an element of revenue philately. We don't consider it its own approach, but of course, if you decide only to work with revenue stamp papers or only with imprinted bill of exchange, we would accept. Some word about history of revenue collecting. In recent FIP exhibitions, there were rumors that the revenue class seems to be to score highest. It may be true that in the beginning we have been granting unknown material, and now we got used to it. And what's also true is we had a lot of long-time collections that suddenly turned up. Now, when it comes that new people start to collect revenues and they have to really start from scratch, I'm pretty sure the overall picture will change rapidly. The tradition of collecting revenues has been focused on stamps. We don't consider this correct anymore. We feel a good balance between stamps and their usage is a common goal of any approach. Yeah, the classic revenue collections have been focusing on as many different stamps as possible. It's an open secret. we have too many revenue stamps to show all of them. Today, an exhibit rather tells the story behind the stamps and the taxes and fees related. Scope of an exhibit. I think it's important that everybody understands that an exhibit is not the collection. The collection always is much wider and has much more material. It's impossible to show all the variations with any denomination. Yeah, we need to consider essentials, and we need to create a storyline that really invites to keep on reading. And that's not important for the judge. That's important for the visitor of a show. We want people coming to our exhibitions and to look at them. And this is what a judge tries to figure out. Is this really a nice story that people like to look at and really like to stay on studying? And this is maybe the biggest award that we can get if people like to study our exhibit and stay with it for a while, and afterwards remember what we have shown them. The title reveals importance. Importance are 10 points. And I think that the title makes a very good direction. A classic subject that many people have collected, then we must ask ourselves, where does the specific exhibit stand in line? When we consider a whole country exhibit, we need to ask ourselves, how deep can it be developed? If you collect all British Indian revenues, wow, that's so many of them that even if you want to show each only once in an exhibit, 8 frames will not be enough space. If we go down to a specific issue, we must give a good explanation. What is the significance of that very issue? Why do we want to exhibit it? And if we come to Indian states and we consider that we have more than 500 different Indian states, I don't want to make a list of what is more important state than the other. So here we have already the first big problem. Now, when it comes to treatment, it's easy to get a single source, maybe one archive, and then you try to build up a story around it. But in an exhibit, the different chapters should be balanced. The choice of material should be showing as many different elements of the revenue philately as possible. Here we feel we should compare like the thematics. They try to get as many philatelic elements to tell their storyline. And we think we have so many different rates, we have so many different revenues, try to bring a good variety into the exhibit. Very essential for us is the storyline. It should be complete, it should be easy to follow, and it should not jump from chapter to chapter and you don't really understand why and what is the connections between them. Again, please avoid to combine different approaches that could become an exhibit of its own. I feel free to show a picture of an Indian exhibit. I took the picture in Bangkok last December. A very nice exhibit and more tuning to speak with the exhibitor who gave us all the background information that sadly we could not find written on the page. So the knowledge of the exhibitor was there, but was not shown by it. And to give you an example of what I suggest with a frame, make a frame a chapter by itself. You see in the upper left, first first page in the frame, you see some I like to say cut squares overlapping documents from the last chapter, which I feel quite unhappy presentation. Later more to this. And then we have one big set, wonderful proof material, different formats, and it's very hard for the visitor to understand that, oh yes, the low denominations are smaller format than the higher denominations. So here the optic is not really underlying the story of the set, that this small and big size belong together. We see the problem of way too many dominations. So we use here overlapping. We need to find a better balanced way to explain this big set that really should get a frame for its own with proofs and usages. And you see that in the lower end of the frame, again, there are some small folded documents that do not really show the usage. Now, my talk hopefully will give you some idea on how to arrange this much better. Completeness. I mentioned the many different denominations, and I think in general it's really impossible to show all issued stamps and rates of the revenues. Any size of an exhibit will become too big. The great number will always force us to select, and the choice again, consider the storyline and cover all possible aspects. And then completeness is achieved and we have the balance. I give you an example here from my own Austrian revenue exhibit. The 18 gulden is the key value of the set. So I'm showing all kind of perforation varieties, the watermarks, the printing varieties, the paper falls, everything on the key item of the set. And I think everybody else may assume that the same can be found for each other denomination. So important is to show all the aspects. If you have to do it with many different denominations, still okay. If you can do it with the key denomination, then it's the top level. If you just do it with any single denomination, I think it's already quite difficult to achieve. Now, back to importance. In general, 10 points are considered to be split in two groups. 5 points for the importance of the topic, 5 points for the collection in its area. Now, in revenues, the question is if we really have enough people collecting the same area so that we can compare. So it's really very hard to compare the different revenue exhibits in the meaning of what is more important, what is really the key. Here we need to be quite open with comparing similar exhibits and really see what is it in the global point of view and what is the importance of that specific exhibit compared to others. Knowledge. Knowledge is where we can gain and in research where we can gain most in revenues, more than we can do in the postal side of the hobby. We know there are now many catalogs for most of the revenues. I think it seems really essential that we not only write down what we can see on first glance on a document. I will give you some examples. And again, the choice of the material seems an essential feature to underline the knowledge. What I want to say is, as we have so much material around that we cannot show all, we really have to pick what we think is the best for this exhibit. And doing this kind of choice is what tells about your knowledge. I like to show essays and proofs. And I've seen many, many revenue exhibits that somehow found some proofs, and all we can read is, oh, that's a proof, and nothing else. There's always an important date and a reason for the proof. Is it before hardening? Is it progressive? Is it an essay that has not been accepted or that needs to be altered? What kind of experiment has been done? In my Austrian revenues, it's all about preventing stamps to be reused. So fraud has been a big issue, and I like to explain with each proof essay that I'm showing why it's been made, when it's been made, and what is the background of it. And believe me, you need perfect art literature and a lot of research to figure this out. Just to show a proof should not be considered enough. Then we cannot grant the points for the essay and proof shown. Research. In traditional exhibits, the purpose of the stamp, its usage, should be shown and properly explained. And I think this is where we can do a lot of research when the catalog listing of the pure stamp finally is done. If we just show loose stamps, proofs, printing varieties, we don't consider a full story, and I think it will be difficult to gain points in research. What is traditional research? One of my favorite Indian states is Sukat. And when I see these wonderful hand-drawn stamps that in mirror image have been hand-painted on the printing stone directly, I think it's a great challenge and a very traditional aspect of lithographic print collecting to reconstruct a printing sheet. While I think I have a good start of this pane of 16, at least I have 10, but 6 stamps are missing. So it's a long way to go on for understanding what really has been the stone layout for all of these Sukat state stamps. And they must have created hundreds of them, and maybe they had just a few stones. So whenever they printed, they cleaned the stone and did the next different kind of hand drawing for the next denomination. Another of my favorite Indian state revenues, you see these wonderful red octagons looking a little bit like the stop mark in the traffic sign today. In the catalogs, you find only the basic denomination listed. when we exhibit these stamps, and here I will come to my personal end to exhibit India, we find there is a lot written on the stamp. The upper row, the two stamps, they obviously show a signature, most likely the tax supervisor who gave the validation of the stamp. But we have further information like numbers, maybe the document number. And we have more signatures. Below, we find a lot of text lines even. The signature, the approval has been moved to the right side. So over the time of using these big stamps with the imprint, all these signatures and parts, this belongs to the revenue system, and this should be researched and well described. For somebody like me, not being able to read, and I don't speak any Indian, this may become a miracle. All I can do is I can work out and show these differences. In the bottom row, I've chosen one readable stamp and the other one where the watercolor was way too much, so that part of the design simply has been wiped off by flushing color. A wonderful printing variety that makes it very hard to distinguish the different denominations of these stamps. A page that I've also taken in Bangkok. For me, this is a very, very good, perfect example of a full document showing a rare traditional stamp, how it's used, and then with all kinds of description of what's the document about, how it is, what's the tax rate, why is the tax rate, and you have a perfect traditional description. So here we can really get to understand what we have to deliver to get high score in knowledge and research, to get all this together. One of my favorite examples that not always a document is what you see on first glance. If I'm missing my pointer here. If or maybe it works this way. If I read Pressburg on 24th October 1809, it's Hungary, capital of Hungary at that time. October 1809, French troops, Napoleon's troops have been in Vienna. They never went into Hungary. But this is what the French troops created to collect taxes in Austria. So this document, on first glance, is a French signet, used in Hungary. So everybody can say, hey, we have witness, we have a proof. So Napoleon went into Hungary. It's a text over there. No, it's totally misunderstanding. The document is a proxy. Vollmacht, you can read here the word Vollmacht, so it's a proxy. And the text below the document, signed by a notar, he is confirming the proxy from Pressburg is valid in Vienna. Vienna is well hidden under the seal, so even if it's not overlapped, you could not read Vienna. The French tax has been collected in Austria and not in Hungary. So the first glance to look at this document misleads to a wrong conclusion, and to really understand what it is, that there's a proxy text by the notar collected in Vienna for a proxy issued in Hungary. This is what we consider to be the full story behind the document. You really need to understand the tax law, and you must look twice. And this is what gives the points for research and knowledge. Condition. Revenuers don't care conditions. This was around when I started to collect revenues. Everybody said so. And is that so? Do we really don't like condition? I don't think so. But tax paid often get damaged in usage. These are medicine tax labels that also gave the public a guarantee that this is a medicine approved by governments, so it's taxed. And the forged revenue tax seals that we find are not made not to collect the tax or not to pay the tax. They have been made to sell forged medicine. But when you open a box like this, the revenue seal definitely is getting destroyed. Now, to throw it away and not to keep it would be a big mistake. So yes, we still like to collect these damaged stamps because there is no way to get them intact when they have been used for sealing a box. And of course, the medicine 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago should have been used. We have this wonderful world of defacing Queen Victoria, especially here in India. So the head of Victoria or the coat of arms of Britain have been punched away. Some kind of public resistance. Anyhow, this is standard. We find it on most of the Indian revenues. But when we really want to exhibit and collect something special, we will try to find documents who escaped this punching. And of course, these are more difficult to find than the standard punched ones. Used as prescribed. And in Austria, red crayon should have been used by the controller just to show, yes, the stamp was right. We checked it. The tax is paid correctly. And we have this ugly, bad-looking crayon marks on the stamps. Of course, they have been valid. They have been used as prescribed. Of course, they are collectible, but it's not the condition we like in our collections. So let me say 70% of stamps, more or less, are defaced, are crayon marked, are ugly, and is not what we like to present in a perfect exhibit. It comes to 25%, which is clean, sound, nice, no punch hole, perfect looking. This is what a collection should show. And if it comes to just the seal, by the way, against the law, against the rule on how to use stamps, and if you find it in color, maybe less than 1% of the revenues we find today have a colored seal only. So here is the quality, the condition on its upper level. When we show revenues, in Austria, it was even forbidden to collect them mint because you could always use the unused stamps later on to pay tax for all-time revenue document. If you want to go to court, you must show a document that was properly taxed or it was not valid. So if you make lots of contracts and issue a lot of documents, you may always keep some unused stamp back in your office. And if it comes that you need to get to court, you can always go and say, please, now I put my unused revenue on top of the document, it's valid, and I could claim the fee. And today we don't have all revenues unused. They don't exist. Showing a complete unused set is impossible for Austria. Sometimes in inflation period, you have more unused set material than you have used material. So the very strict rule in traditional philately is that unused and used material should not be shown together. I feel more open and say, well, if there is no set unused in existence, why not combining it? It also leads to a very important question that we have in revenues. We have seen the BPA before. This kind of certificates and expertization we don't have in the revenue collecting. I hope everybody can see that the wording has been bleached out to create a look-alike unused stamp. Sorry to say, even though they look nice and are attractive, this one even here with a nice printing spot, they're damaged and they're not supposed to be shown in an exhibit. We lack the expert group for revenues, so it's always something where we must be very careful. For me, the most difficult achievement is to get a set of revenues used in the same city with the same cancellation. This is not done with favor cancels. This is done on proper usage. And the city of Pest, today Budapest, at that time Buda and Pest were two different cities. They have been using all the denominations and they have wonderful clear strikes. It's so far the only city, the only set known from Austria with the same canceling device used on all the denominations. So this is what I like to achieve in perfect presentation, to have the unusual best form of usage and full set from the same city. Coming back to India, we very often find cut squares, and it's a pity that the old-time collectors did cut the documents. And I feel the only thing worse than cutting out is to throw away what's left over. For me, this is still very nice research material. It's still possible to go on with studies and typing and understanding, but it's not what should be exhibited. Be very, very careful to use cut squares in an exhibit unless you really need it for a good explanation. And don't fold documents down so that they look like cut squares. Now, again, defaced, beautiful golden color, state of tongue with a very nice date cancel around, but clip document, stamp almost touched, even though it's beautiful and attractive with this gold and copper color, hardly to be exhibited. But what I like to mention here again, that obviously is a number, and this obviously all these signatures and even on the stamp, all this marking they have a reason and should be explained what is what. Is there a number or a fee within the revenue stamp itself? Again, it's really obviously a number. We need to explain it. Don't just say it's that denomination printed in that color. We have a lot of elements in revenues that need to be explored and to be understood. Something that really struck me, because the defacing the punch has been done before fixing the stamp on the document, which I think is pretty unusual. Normally, it's done after the stamp was sitting on the document, so paper and stamp are punched at the same time. And again, well, here the site canceller, the date canceller is in a very poor and bad stage. So even if the stamp is nice, this is not an exhibition piece. And if you show, again, you have a lot of wordings around the stamp, a lot of things, we should try to identify and to tell about it. A full document with one of the huge stamps, again, with a lot of marks. This is what gives a storyline. And again, we have a lot of things that one needs to explain and to describe. The reason why I personally disqualified to exhibit Indian states, because I can't read it, I can't identify it. But this is what I'd like to see as a judge, to give high score in research. This document is about 1 meter long. It's an endless text. It's only the stamp on top with all these side markings. And frankly speaking, the stamp is not even tied to the document. So here we are getting really lost. And with this few examples of City of Tong, here's another one with signatures giving by thumbprints. I think it's a real challenge, but we do find the documents that tell the entire story of why and what has been paid with the stamp and how it's been used and what additional signatures numbers are in accordance with the revenue stamp. And good luck finding. This is a challenge and the joy of revenue collecting, that we really can find that much in our field. Again, I took another picture in Bangkok from a friend of Nepal. Again, a collector with incredible deep research and knowledge, but with a little unhappy hand to fold each document to the same size. And when you see here that sometimes even the additional markings are folded away, I think that's very unlucky, because it's not only the revenue stamp itself, the circular face value giving revenue imprints with the red date mark. It's also always coming with another seal of an authority. This is what I think we should give with any of these documents. I'm happy that I cannot read Nepalese, but somebody translated, so I know what is the contents of this document. We know about the seal of the authority. It's not a revenue stamp paper because the revenue seal is missing, but we have this typical number stamp, this red one. So this is not a revenue stamp paper document, but we find them very often in revenue exhibits. Well, it's a payment. Somebody bought gold and it's a receipt, but it's not text. When we show it, we now should explain why there is no revenue stamp with that document other than that one, where we have the revenue seal, but we have the authority seal, and we have other stamps from noblemen, from clerks, whatever. And when we show a document like this, we really need to explain revenue, date stamp, and please, what are the others? This is the perfect research and information to be given with a revenue document. Let's talk about rarity. We often hear, oh, it's very hard to obtain. I think that's nothing about rarity. And if it's expensive, maybe that's rather a guarantee to be able to buy it if you only have some money, because then auction houses and big dealers care for. So they are going to offer it for you. So the material that is not expensive enough that an auction will make it a single lot and dealers don't know it and don't care for it, maybe that's the more difficult to find. Now we need to understand how to get a feeling for rarity. Now, when we have the numbers sold, and this is my favorite set of Buenos Aires, while the smallest value, 272,000 sold, but if we come up to the higher denominations, 18, 12, 9, 11, 2, nil sold, 1, nil, 2, nil, nil. That's rare because the stamps have hardly been sold, and still we can find them. But these are, well, leftovers of the one sheet printed that helped to sell the 911 two copies. They've also been sold in triples with overprints, first, second, third for a bill of exchange. So when we are lucky to have this kind of background numbers, then we know exactly what we are talking about. But that is a rare exception that we have this kind of information for our revenues. Most of the time, we don't know. And then how to distinguish rarity. Now, this is from my home city. It's a contract for a foundation of a company. And Gesellschaftsstempel means that's a company founding fee. So the revenues here have especially been issued for that purpose. And if you find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different denominations, from 5 pfennigs, the smallest, up to 500 marks, the highest, anybody is tempted to say, oh, that's the philatelic usage. No, it's not. The value of the company has been exactly that high that there's been no more simple way to pay the fee other than with these 8 different stamps. I think this is most likely unique and a real rare mixed ranking by chance, by 100% genuine usage and by coincidence of the amount of money dealt with. The Gesellschaftsstempel, 5 Pfennig, by the way, is for a shoe cleaner. I have one document of a shoe cleaner who applied for his little shop, street corner shop. So we had this in Germany as well, and he had to pay only 5 Pfennig for his shoe cleaning business. I consider this rare as well, because how many of these documents may have survived, that a shoe cleaner who had to take it with him, that this is still existing today. I was so happy to get the 5 penny sole usage. Anyhow, another thing on rarity and importance that I like to encourage people to use is provenance. Giving the name of the famous collectors who owns that stamp before. Yes, even in revenue collecting, we have more than 100 years history. I can trace down some revenues in my collection, the ownership of the last 120, 130 years. And Ignaz Meyer is very famous. He was even founder of the Winterbona. Kohut, Gunst, Martin Erler, famous revenuer. So we really have some important big collections, big names for each area. And when we have the key item and the 8 golden on bluish paper, stamps that has not been printed after the invention of bluish paper, so this all experimental phase, yes, then we can show our forefathers, we keep our collecting history alive, and we underline these are important stamps because key items of the all-time collections. That I could find in eBay, the 8 golden on fragment, that was a lucky find, and that these stamps are crossed out as prescribed. Well, it's the only 8 golden on fragment. There's no document known, so I don't care to show it in that condition. And saying that, showing another 1 golden, very common, very ordinary stamp, crossed out. So it's not the condition that I like. And I give a lot of explanation text. And everybody says, right, you write too much, reduce your text. Well, this document so far is the only known, which is a big surprise, but it shows that the bluish paper has been done in experimental phase. We know it, we have the records of the paper purchase and paper making, but that it was put in use before it was officially introduced. It's proven by the existence of the 8 golden and that very document. And so I explain all about the idea of why the paper is bluish and why this document is so very special. So far, the only one that we could find using a stamp on this experimental paper before it was really introduced. And then, of course, the rarity explains itself. Thank you for your attention. I hope people could understand and could follow, and I'm happy if you have any more questions.
Ralph, thank you very much for a fabulous presentation. I'm sure this was very, very insightful for everybody attending, especially for me, because I'm considering collecting, well, exhibiting at some point revenue. So with that said, let's start off with the questions. I encourage everybody to please type in your questions in the chat box, and we'll get to them one by one. So let's see, where is the chat box? Here we go. Why? Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So the first question comes from Virendra Sharma. Virendra Sharma writes, most Indian fiscal stamp papers are vertically very long. Which approach is better for exhibiting? A, vertical presentation with few folds in the stamp paper, or B, horizontal on an A3 paper without fold? In that case, the text would not be easily readable.
What I suggest is don't lay sidewise, never show diagonal. Show it the way it's readable. I very much dislike to fold old paper, but when the document is 1 meter, 2 meters, I think the longest Indian Congreve documents that I have seen myself was about 7 meters in
Wow.
length. Yeah, this I would have loved to own to show above a big exhibit. That was really phenomenal. Of course, we have to fold those. We cannot keep them in their original length. If it's a standard folio format, still only 9 fill up a frame. It makes no sense to show only 9 pieces in a frame. I have been showing in Stockholmia 99 unfolded entire folio sheets in 5 frames. So 99 5 frames. So I show 20 folio documents unfolded in a single frame by overlapping. What I think we need to show with the document is all these special signatures and really important features of the document, the date, but we don't need to show all the text. Nobody can read it, nobody will read it. So if we give a short summarize of the text and say, this is what the document is about, and we show obviously the text, the title of the document, is it a receipt, is it a proxy, whatever, and the date, it's perfect. We have, some of my friends collect newspapers, and we bought a lot of newspaper collections. Newspapers are all very big, and they have been folded down to nothing, like cut squares. What my friends did, they kept the entire newspaper title and the date, and then they overlap or fold away all the text, because we don't want to read the newspaper, but we need to appreciate the time when it was printed, of course, the text, the revenue stamp, title, date. If we show the essentials, that's what is important. And of course, we need to use oversized pages. And I very often have different size pages within. The only person I need to convince is the commissioner taking to the exhibition and willing to mount it, because I need to give him quite a lecture on how to mount my very one exhibit. Other people are using only 4 pages a frame. Mike Mailer is doing it, while he even came up with pages as big as the exhibition frame. But this is almost impossible to carry, is impossible to send overseas. So we must find a page size that is doable for the commissioner. And what I always suggest is we have A4 highness. So we can use 2 A4 sheets above each other. So we have double rows, or we have triple rows, depending on transport, depending on the commissioners. And then we really need to do overlapping with the huge documents. We cannot show documents covering 1/2 frame or a frame and showing only one revenue. That makes no sense.
Thank you. The next question is from Fernando Prato. Fernando writes, shouldn't revenue class be divided into different classes in the same way that we have traditional postal history and postal stationery? We can have the equivalent classes for revenues too?
Absolutely no, because we don't have enough revenuers yet. So if in future everybody starts this revenue collection and we are getting plentiful, of course, this may be very good. But then I'm again very nervous, and this is why I don't like it in general, because then we have very strong traditional collecting, maybe fiscal history, and all the other approaches will be lost where to put that. So it was our commission discussion say, no, we want that you can collect the way you want to collect them and you can show it. And we take it, yeah, we judges have to take it and compare it. So we accept any approach. And if there's only one subject based and maybe one pure stationary or whatever you like to choose on how to show your collection, when it's good, when it's well done, when it's logic, when we appreciate it, it's perfect. So we don't want to give a clear, short prescription on how you have to collect. No, we want you to really find your own way to deal with revenues, especially because we have so many different rates, we have so many different stamps, we have too big variety, so we feel any strong reduction to you have to do it that way, we feel is wrong.
Great. Thank you. The next question is from Jane Snowden. Jane writes, do you recommend mentioning provenance in the synopsis, on the page where the important item appears, or on both places?
I would definitely use both way. So when I show my California state revenues, I will definitely say I was lucky to get Cabot. He was given the first good catalog of California state revenues. I got parts of his collection, and then I write this in the synopsis, and then on my pages, I will mark the Cabot original collection items. Definitely.
Great. Thank you. The last question is from Oscar van der Ville. Oscar writes, documents can be very big. Are A2 also accepted for exhibiting on a higher level?
Absolutely. I did so. We have lots of big page examples. Problem, Oscar, is will your commissioner be willing to take huge pages? And that's very often a big problem, that they just don't know how to transport them and they don't want to ruin your material. So that's really a matter of logistics and transports rather than, of course, it must fit in the frame, but that's maybe the easy part. We have to
Right.
find solutions. Yeah.
Right. Well, Ralph, thank you very much with that. I think that concludes all the questions we have on the chat box. Back to you, Pratisad and Virendra.
Thanks, Ralph, for your wonderful and amazing presentation. This is a small token of appreciation from Philately Congress of India. Thanks for your time and wonderful presentation.
Thank you.